Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Sacred She Soul Sessions. I am joined today by the beautiful Samantha Hearne, who is an anxiety coach for women. So I'm really blessed to have connected with her and to have her here joining us today because she's going to share some amazing tips. And I know that this is a topic that has basically affected all of us in the group or some form or fashion of struggling with anxiety, whether it's a lot or if it's a little bit. So I'm really excited to hear her tips today. So welcome, Samantha.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell everyone just a little bit more about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. So, my name is Sam. I'm an anxiety and mindset coach for women all over the world. I coach women in so many different countries, ultimately to allow them to overcome their anxiety and actually start to thrive in your own life, just as you really deserve. And for me, the really big driving force as to why I'm doing this is because I've been there. Anxiety did take hold of me. It did take hold of my life, my relationships, my confidence, everything for a long period of time. And I got to the point where I am now, where I own my own business all around anxiety coaching because I think there's so much conversation around anxiety, but there's not as much conversation about the solutions. So there's a lot of people that have anxiety and feel that they are in that boat, but there's no lifeline to get out of the boat. They just keep floating around in that area. So I wanted to create a business and a community and an environment where people actually get the answers to the struggles. And it's actually about, this is where you are at, let's stop focusing on that, and this is how we get to a happier place. So that's fundamentally what I do and the reason why I do it. And for me, the most important thing is I always try and make sure that what I'm sharing is real. I've either experienced it myself or have tried it myself, and it's all very personal and genuine from me. It's not from a book, it's not from science or facts, it's from real life experience. So for me, that's the real driving force for me, and why I think that what I'm sharing is different, because it's all through how I've grown and how I've become who I am now. And actually, it's so real for everyone to get there. It's not just based on where you are, where you come from, what job you have. It's nothing to do with that. It's just real, genuine people that struggle with real, genuine anxiety and given real, genuine strategies to change that. So that's a little snippet of me.
That's so powerful. I love it so much because you're making a huge impact on the world and you're working with people from all over the world. So I love it so, so much. You're doing amazing things.
Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, why don't we jump right into it? I know that you have some top kind of tips and tools that we're going to share today with everyone that's joining in. And by the way, hi to everyone that's hopping on. I see Aubrey's joined us and Ashley. So, as you ladies hop on or if you're catching the replay, just say hi so we know who is here or who is here. And if you have questions throughout for Samantha or just about what we're talking about, just pop it in the comments and we'll get to those questions as we work through the content today.
Yeah, definitely. If you have any questions, just let me know. In my lives, in my group, people ask questions constantly, and I just stop what I'm doing and answer them. So definitely, if you've got anything you want to say, any comments you want to share, I would love that, because that's how I kind of do things. So I'm very used to that. So if you do want to engage with me and let me know where you're at, then please do. But yeah, definitely. I think what's really important, and this is what I was saying when we spoke before, is, again, there's so much around the topic of anxiety. It's such a well talked about topic, but I don't think necessarily in all the right ways. And the reason that the starting point for me with this is I want to give you some top tips as to what anxiety is and how it's affecting you, and then ways you can move that forward. Because so often anxiety gets put in this generalized bubble, when actually everyone feels and experiences anxiety very differently. And if you don't
Yeah.
fit in this anxious bubble, you feel like you're weird, and you even with anxiety, you're not normal because you don't have anxiety like everyone else, and then you just feel even worse. It's just this constant judgment. And I think that my number one message, before we talk about strategies or how you can move forward has got to be, because for me this was a massive shift in my mindset and in my growth, was understanding that if your anxiety means that you just have a knot in your tummy, or you have a full-blown anxiety attack and you can't breathe, no one is either more worthy of the experience of saying I have anxiety. No one in the situation is more anxious than someone else. Your experience is yours alone, and how it affects you is what we need to work with. It's not about, I don't think it's that bad, and I'm not going to talk about it or tell anyone because it's just this little gut feeling. No, the number one message has got to be, if you don't feel happy, calm and content, and there's something in there that just niggles away at you, you have the right to seek support and help and love and encouragement from the people around you. And that for me is the most important thing to remember. Don't ever feel that unless you are on the floor in a ball crying your eyes out, you can't say to someone, help me, I'm just feeling a little bit crap. Basically, there's no other way of, it hasn't got to be this full-blown end result tornado. If you just feel that bubbling, boiling water inside you, that's enough to say, I want to make a difference and I want to stop that. So that leads me on to my next one, which is taking action. Taking any action is better than no action. So please do not think, which is why that was the first one that I shared, please don't think you have to suffer in silence until you get to the point where it is 100 on the anxiety scale. If you're on 10, take positive action today so that you can bring yourself back to 9876. It hasn't got to ramp up all the way. And I think that's something that people don't talk about. They always say, if you have anxiety, you will have muscle tension, headaches, sickness, emotions, crying, irrational thoughts, which, yeah, I've had all of those tenfold, but I've also had that horrible, insecure worry that I can still function, but I just have this like seed in my head, like, oh, both of those are worthy of taking some form of action, whether it's a text message to a loved one, whether it's a phone call, whether it is a YouTube video, whether it's a book, whether it's a coach, whatever it is, wherever you are on your journey with anxiety, take action today, even if it is the smallest, tiniest thing. Don't ever be ashamed to say, I want to feel better, because ultimately your happiness and your journey should be the most pleasurable for you. And if you aren't getting pleasure from it, you have every right to try and change that. So they're my first two things. Number one, no one's anxiety is any worse or better than anyone else's, because we are all different. If you got married and you were at your wedding, it's the best thing since sliced bread. If you go to someone else's wedding, you don't sit and talk about yours, because it's their wedding, it's their day, and it's their precious memory. This is exactly the same. This is your journey and your experience. Value it enough that you want to make it better. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing, which is the second one. Make sure you're always taking positive action to make your life more pleasurable. It doesn't have to be a struggle. Now, of course, which leads me to my third point, you've got to be realistic, okay? This is, again, something that I just don't think people talk about. Now, when I was in the depth of anxiety, and of course, you can connect with me and learn the story behind that, but when it literally had hold of me to the point that I could not function in any of my relationships or my life with happiness, there was always something holding me back. I just never felt 100% settled. You have to, wherever you are on your journey, be realistic. Do not have an expectation of yourself that right now is not achievable. Now, of course, as you see all over everywhere, you want to have dreams and goals and visions, and you want to have end goals and big pictures. Great. But you also need to have the small, tiny steps that will help you get there. So for me, I know that my anxiety really affected my relationship with my now husband. And if I hadn't have started my journey, there is no way we'd be together. It was catastrophic. There's no other word for it. I was out of control, and he could not help me. There was, no matter what he did, there inside of me, there was always something that he did wrong. I just could not feel secure and safe in myself. And for me, it would be unrealistic for me to have said from that point, tomorrow we're going to live in bliss. That is not realistic. So and then all I would have done is felt even more shit, you know, like, oh my gosh, you know, today we've had an argument, this is all going to fail. No, it was right from now. All I want to do is be able to get to tomorrow and be honest and open with my emotions without getting anxious or angry. Then the next day, I would love to be able to, if you do something that makes me feel anxious, explain it to you and you just reassure me, etc. So wherever you are in your journey, make sure you are realistic with your expectation of yourself. Do not expect more of yourself than you are able to provide. That doesn't mean you don't have an end goal. So yes, you want an end goal, but from where you are to that, make sure this journey is realistic for you. Otherwise, you will continue to feel stressed, overwhelmed, nervous, failing. You will continue to feel that like it's just not working. And then you end up back where you were, if not worse. So if this is where we are, this is where we want to get to, this gap in the middle has to be realistic, or you end up all the way over there. So now you're not even in the scale because you've pulled yourself so far back. So for me, they're my top three. 1, it's your journey and yours alone. 2, take positive action today to have a pleasurable life, whatever that is, however small that action needs to be. 3, be realistic about the expectations you're setting yourself daily, weekly, monthly, and just focus on every small positive step, which leads back to point 2, allows you to get closer to the end result that you want, but it has to be realistic for you. It has to be in a way that allows you to feel success, progress, growth, not even more failure, insignificance, panic. So that would be my overview of anxiety in a whole.
Yeah, that's so powerful too, because I think so many people are comparing their anxiety to somebody else's. Like, I love your wedding analogy because it's so true. Like, we're trying to compare it to other people, and then people are always trying to go from 0 to 100, and they feel like they have to resolve all of their anxiety right away and hit that big goal. So I think the reality side of it is so important.
So important, so important. And I love an analogy. I have loads. I literally use them all the time. So yeah, that's nothing new there, but definitely with the wedding one, that's it's the same if you were to like have a car. Everyone, even if you had the same car, you're going to drive it differently. So nothing is going to be exactly the same. You just can't quantify an emotion with someone else's because you're not the same person. You don't have the same brain. You don't have the same life. So definitely, I think that's a fundamental message around what I'm trying to share. Definitely.
Yeah, no, and I think that's so important because I really think every single person has felt anxiety before, but how we feel it is different. Like, some people probably feel a lot more of those physical symptoms right away where they're going right into a panic attack and it's really, really extreme. But I think a lot of people too are having those more subtle feelings where they've got that nagging feeling in their gut, or they just feel unsettled and they feel because they're not in a full anxiety attack that people aren't going to take them serious or that they can't be supported.
Yeah, 100%. They just feel like they've got to struggle along.
So what do you find are, I mean, the tips that you've already given us are huge on kind of identifying and knowing where you're at on your journey around anxiety. I just want to make sure we're still live. It says that it's ended. Is it still showing live for you, Sam?
Yeah, it's still saying live.
Okay, just making sure. So yeah, I'm just wondering, like, what are your top tips if you start working with someone and they come to you and say they're kind of, I don't know how you measure it in terms of average anxiety, but maybe some days are worse than others, but they definitely have some ongoing anxiety. Where would you suggest that someone starts? Like, when you say start taking realistic little actions, like, how can they identify what some of those might be?
Yeah. Okay. So again, I think that with this, the fundamental thing, and the majority of my lovely ladies that come to me are in this boat. And I've been there. So that's the other reason why I talk so openly about this, because this is an experience that I've been through. So everything that I share and I talk about, not only has it come from a personal experience, it's something that I can see in other people. This is great. Thank you. You're so welcome, Ashley. You're so welcome. So a lot of my clients that I have repeated anxiety. So what I mean by that is the same thing makes them anxious all the time, but just different days, different weeks, different months. But it's the same bubble. Okay. Now they all are very different, and I coach all of them very differently. They don't have the same relationships with me, the same content. It's all completely different because, like I said, everyone is different, and everyone responds differently as well. So one of the main things that I would do is I always get into the head of that person. So they tell me something and I say, right, can I just tell you how that makes you feel? And you tell me if I'm right. 10 out of 10, they always say, yeah, that's it, bang on. And the only reason that happens is because I've been there. So I'm like, yeah, I know that feeling. So I think the big thing with this, to actually identify where the anxiety has come from for you, I think the biggest thing that I could share, which I do with all my lives, the biggest message that I give is, don't worry so much about the feeling, worry about the reason. Now, obviously, you can go into so much more depth of this, which obviously I do with anyone that I work with one-to-one, but on a generic scale, it's like, for example, if someone made you laugh and you were laughing, when you retold that story, you'd want to know the reason you were laughing, because you'd want to make the person you're telling the story laugh. So you would say, oh my gosh, I laughed so hard today. They go, oh, why? Why did you laugh so hard? Oh, Sam told me this joke and I'll tell it to you and see if it makes you laugh. So you always give the reason behind the emotion. But when it's ourselves, we never do that. So when you have the emotion, the anxiety, and it comes up over and over and over again, what is the actual reason behind it? And this is where it can get complicated. People can be very instinctive with that and give me a very jerk reaction, like, well, it's because today I got stuck in traffic. No, that's your impulse. Like, this is me in the moment why I'm anxious. That's not it. Why has that made you anxious, though? There's a reason behind that. Where does it stem from? What is the crux? Is it you don't like being late because you don't like letting people down, and therefore if you let people down, they won't like you anymore? Just there's always a path. Wherever you think you are in the anxiety, there's always a backstory. So you think about the reason. That would be my big thing. Take yourself away from the emotion and think about the reason. So use that analogy. If someone made you cry, you would goddamn remember why, because they've upset you. So you'd be like, you've upset me and this is the reason why, and I think it's out of order. You wouldn't just sit and cry and not know the reason. It would be in context. All of our emotions are the same. If you were angry with someone, you would have a reason why, because you justify the anger. But for some reason, when it's anxiety, we just submit. We just surrender, and we just completely, that's it, I'm just going to let it happen, and we just take it. Think about the reason that you are anxious. Why is your emotions, why is your brain, why are your thoughts, why is your actions, where is the reason behind that? Because there's always going to be a starting point. Once you become aware of just asking yourself for the reason, you will start to just break that cyclical habit, because we have an emotion, we can either run with it or we can leave it. Anxiety, we always run with it, overthink it, analyze it, go back to the start, and the whole thing goes again. It's before you do that, when you have the emotion, before you run with it, think, why though? Where's the connection? And the thing is, the other really important thing to know is sometimes the reason you're anxious is valid. If you were doing a bungee jump, that's a valid time to feel anxious, because it's just trying to make you know that it's a bit risky. If you were speaking in front of 1,000 people and you aren't a public speaker, you might be anxious because you want to make a good impression. The emotion isn't what's negative here, it's our perception of it. The connotation we have with the emotion is where the problem stems from. It's not the emotion itself. So when you feel anxious, that's where you need to ask yourself the reason, because sometimes it is valid. It is valid. And I still have times that I feel anxious, and actually that's totally okay. That's like saying you can never laugh again. That's ridiculous.
I think too, like, that happens a lot, I've noticed, in our community and just with women that I've connected with in general, where there's a lot more awareness and owning the fact of talking around anxiety, depression, mental illness. There's a lot more of that going around and just being okay with talking about it. But at the same time, I find with a lot of women that are kind of rising up and in this women's empowerment movement, there's also almost a sense of shame around anxiety when we look at the deeper rooted, like, what's the reason? You're really hitting the nail on the head, because a lot of people I'll talk to day to day and they'll say, oh, I'm having an anxious day, or I need some support. Like, I'm seeing that more people are reaching out to say that, but then they're all kind of shameful or feeling guilty when we talk about the reason why that they're feeling that guilt. A lot of people, they kind of shy away from that. So I feel like that's very, very valuable to really be exploring the reason, like the deeper reasons why, because it's I love your metaphor because it's so true. If someone made me angry or someone made me sad or someone made me laugh, I would totally tell them that. But if I'm feeling anxious, a lot of the time I'm not acknowledging why.
Yeah, see? And also, on that note about with the shame, so this is an example I use all the time, and obviously I'll keep it generic, but one of my clients came to me after being on antidepressants for many years, and we had a number of sessions, and she went to her doctor and got the dose reduced for the first time in years. There's no shame in that. Who's embarrassed now? No one. So if you're at the beginning and you feel that shame and that judgment, when you get to the other side and you can say that you've progressed to a point that you've never felt before, you will have no shame whatsoever. And now, when I'm quite vocal with my emotions, and I've always been very good at expressing them. Even if I didn't know how to handle them, I could always talk about them. And when I did feel at my worst, like this is just not work, I don't know how to make this better, I always knew that I hadn't felt like that forever. I wasn't a 10-year-old that felt like that. And some people are, but I didn't have that intense emotion for all that time. Yes, I had it, but it wasn't as bad as it was at that point. And when I think about it now, I think I could have felt shame. I could have, of course, but I wouldn't be able to stand here now saying I own my own business and I help women overcome anxiety. There's no shame in that. No one will stand and say to me now, do you know what, Sam? It's ridiculous that you had anxiety. That I've never had anxiety and I'm great. People don't do that. When they see you get to the other side and you've grown and you've become your happiest self, whatever that means for you, no one will judge you for the fact you've had anxiety. They'll say to you, how did you overcome it? How did you do that? How did you find the strength? How are you where you are now? No one will say, I think it's ridiculous. They just won't, because they'll see how much you've grown and the strength that you have. So when you do feel that shame, think to yourself, I can sit in this shame and I can fester in it and it can keep me where I am. Or I can be brave enough to know that I want a pleasurable, happy life. When you get to that end result, like I said, when you get to here, people will say, how did you do it? They won't say why. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? They won't do that. They'll say, how did you do that? That's what you need.
It's always the how.
Always the how.
Wow, that is super powerful stuff. I see there's still quite a few people that are tuning in. So let Sam know if you have any questions about that, because I think that is a huge takeaway, I think even for me, because it doesn't matter how much personal growth you've done, there are still times where you're going to have anxiety. And that was really powerful for me too, for you to say that there are going to be times where it's normal in the sense of having anxiety, like you're about to go on stage or you're about to do something you've never done before. It's more the reasoning behind and the value that we're placing on that emotion.
100%. And I think as well now, I own it, whereas before I tried to ignore it. And the other thing is, because again, like I said, I'm real. I'm a genuine real life human. I'm not living on a bubble with unicorns. That's not it. And of course, obviously people see me on social media and they see me in my group and things like that. And of course they look at me and think, I want to get to that point where anxiety doesn't rule my life. But everyone that connects with me knows I still have anxiety within me somewhere. And I still have times that it does talk to me. But that's okay, because I also still have happiness. I still have excitement. I still have fear. I still have anger. I still have sadness. why should I not still have an emotion just because for a period of my life it took over? That's not the case. You will and should always, you should always have every emotion. It's just being able to manage, deal and accept them with the right strategies. That's the big thing. It's not about, and this is what a lot of messages are, you know, get rid of anxiety in 7 days, you won't feel anxious ever again. Now that's really good if you are on board with that, of course, but for me, emotions are a gradual, progressive, changeable thing, and I just want to make sure it's sustainable. So for me, anyone that comes in contact with me knows I will always say, you will still feel anxiety at times in your life when it is necessary, because it's an emotion, not because it's who you are. But you need to get to a point that you can manage, understand, and embrace that emotion just like you do happiness, love, excitement. It's exactly the same. So it's just changing that perception. So for me, definitely, I think it's remembering, exactly like you said, it serves its purpose when we allow it to. It's only when we allow it to run wild that it takes over. Then it becomes debilitating and you just can't move past it. So it's releasing that and allowing it to just be what it is, and that is an emotion. That's all it is.
I feel like that's so helpful on basically rewriting our relationship story with anxiety, because if we felt heaps of happiness, we wouldn't say, wow, we've had too much happiness, it overtook our life, so we better not have that emotion anymore. Same kind of thing with anxiety. It's an emotion. It goes away. It serves its place. It's more so working on our actual relationship to how we're thinking about that emotion.
Exactly.
Wow, super powerful and really, really helpful. I know everyone that's watching this is getting a lot of value, and then everyone catching the replay. I have a few ladies I know for sure catching this later today, so you have to let us know in the comments what you think on Sam's take of anxiety, because I think it's really helpful. And Sam, I'm wondering before we wrap up, like, where can people best connect with you and follow you and get a little bit into your network here with what you're doing with anxiety?
Yeah, so I do weekly lives all about anything to do with anxiety and negative mindset and fears and insecurities. And I'm doing one actually when we finish, all about how to manage fear in your life.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the best place I think to connect with me is in my Facebook group, not my business page. So my business page I use more for just uplifting comments and, you know, the reviews and things like that. But my Facebook group is where I go into a lot of detail, and I really go deep with my emotions and my journey. And also everyone in my group shares their journey and experience. And I think it's because it's that safe place. So if you're in a situation where you want to be around like-minded women who feel similar emotions to you and potentially can support and encourage one another, my Facebook group is the best place to go, which is a happy mind and a yellow love heart emoji. So
I love that.
yeah, so my business is called A Happy Mind because obviously that's what we want naturally. So it's all about your journey to your happiest mind. So it's a happy mind with a yellow love heart, and you'll see a photo of me.
Perfect. Well, we'll link it up in the actual description of this. So if anyone's watching and you want to connect with Sam, you can add her on Facebook. You can go into her group. I'll put her website on there as well if you want to check out some more of that in her business page. But sounds like Facebook and her group are the best ways to be in touch with her community and what she's doing around anxiety. And if I'm not in that group, I'm going to make sure I join in there as well, because I think there's a lot of value. Awesome. Well, I really want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you to everyone that joined us for this call. And yeah, I know you have another live that you're going to do, so I'll let you go, Sam.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, and I'm sure that there'll be some more collaborations in the future.
Definitely, 100%. Thank you for having me, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah.